अग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः। तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे महादेवाय धीमहि तन्नो रुद्र प्रचोदयात्। कात्यायनाय विद्महे कन्याकुमारी धीमहि तन्नो दुर्गे प्रचोदयात्। नारायणाय विद्महे वासुदेवाय धीमहि तन्नो विष्णु प्रचोदयात्। महादेव्यै च विद्महे विष्णुपत्नी च धीमहि तन्नो लक्ष्मी प्रचोदयात्। तत्पुरुषाय विद्महे महासेनाय धीमहि तन्नः षण्मुखः प्रचोदयात्। भूतनाथाय विद्महे भवपुत्राय धीमहि तन्नः शास्ता प्रचोदयात्। आदित्याय च सोमाय मंगलाय बुधाय च शुक्रशनिभ्यश्च राहवे केतवे नमो नमः। आञ्जनेयाय विद्महे वायुपुत्राय धीमहि तन्नो हनुमत् प्रचोदयात्। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। सर्वमङ्गलमाङ्गल्ये शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यम्बके गौरी नारायणि नमोऽस्तुते। राजाधिराजाय प्रसज्ञसागिने नमो वयं वै श्रवणाय कुर्महे। समे कामान् कामकामाय मह्यं कामेश्वरो वै श्रवणो दधातु। कुबेराय वै श्रवणाय महाराजाय नमः। सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। विनायकादि समस्त हरिहर देवताभ्यो नमः। सर्व अपराध क्षमार्थं सर्वमंगल प्राप्त्यर्थं अलक्कार पंचमुख दीपं दर्शयामि। आचमनीयं समर्पयामि दिव्यरक्षां धारयामि। इन्द्रस्तोमेन पञ्चदशेन मध्यमिदं वातेन सहरेण रक्षां धारयामि।
Murali?
Thank you, Dr. Biram. Namaste, everyone. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Dr. Biram, would you let me have the permission to do that, please?
Sure. You should be able to do that.
Okay. Don't have any sound. Okay. See if I can make this a little bigger.
We can see it.
How about now, Dr. Biram? Is that okay still?
Yeah, now it is perfect. Size is good now.
Okay, thank you. Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Biram, Dr. Nair, Dr. Raju, and all the organizers of this wonderful series of talks and prayers. It's my privilege to take the turn to quote unquote teach, but really I learn more than you probably will today in preparing for this, and I enjoy every evening's session. So today I thought I would talk about living a purposeful life. This is a little bit of an extension of something that we covered for our 8th grade Chinmaya class a couple of weeks ago. And I see my friend Shubha on here. She introduced me to a course called Param Vedanta online. And I happened to be listening to a little review of Ishavasya Upanishad. And I saw something in there that tied the two together. So I'm going to do my best to try to merge those two things together to maybe come up with some lessons on or principles about how to live a purposeful life. So let's start with our usual opening prayers. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So in our Chinmaya text, we taught our students about the cycles of life, the circle of life, how we start sort of in a vulnerable position. That's Jayate, birth. Asti, we have our life in the world. We grow, that's Vardate. Vipare Rinamate, that's the body changing. But then there's a decline of the body, Apakshiyate and Nasyati, where we ultimately die. There are some that believe that our life is predestined, but really our scriptures say that it's up to us. We may not control the circumstances that we're born into, but it is completely up to us to fight and to try to have a positive outlook and to live a good life every day. So regardless of the circumstances, whether we were born with a silver spoon in our mouth or we had to struggle for everything, our destiny is really in our hands. We talked about the facts of life, the fact that we are performers, and that really this whole world is just a performance. Again, we don't necessarily decide the roles that we play, or at least early in life. And for those that are physicians, we talk about being on stage, like managing yourself when you're taking care of a patient. And so life is really just one big performance. It's just a one-way street. There's no looking back. We don't usually get second chances, or at least not for the same moment. This moment will never be there again. There's no rewinding. So we have to sort of play the roles that we're given. That doesn't mean we become victims and say, well, this is, these are the cards that I've been dealt. Yes, that's true. But we can still try to make our life be very positive. In the Western world, there are a couple of ways to do this. This is Mel Robbins. She talks about principles such as visualization, manifestation, and these are tools to guide our life. And really, we have this part of our brain called the reticular activating system, where if we tell something to ourselves enough times, we'll believe it and we'll find examples of those things in our lives. So if we think we are successful, then we will see throughout the course of the day examples of feeling good and saying, okay, yes, I've got this, that went well. I'm feeling good about the next thing. But if we or other people are telling us that we are failures or that we're not good enough, then the same thing will happen. It's the same as if it was fact. So our mind will look for ways to say, see, you couldn't do that. That was too much for you to take on. You never do anything right, so on and so forth. So this concept of visualizing is reprogramming our reticular activating system. So this exercise is where you visualize what it would look like if you were the kind of person that you wanted to be. So if you acted the way you would have envisioned yourself acting, or you'd like to act with your family or with your children or with your coworker or something like that, or something you're trying to reach, what would that look like? What would that feel like? And sort of seeing yourself achieving that and thinking about what it would feel like will make you much more likely to reach that. So that's visualization, or Oprah calls it manifestation. Basically, different examples of the same. Gurudev Swami Chinmaya talks about devotion being another tool. And previously I spoke about bhakti, the different levels of bhakti. But, and there's a fine line between love and devotion. Love is something that we like. That's sort of an emotion to the lower. That's saying like, I love chocolate, or I love watching football, or something like that. But devotion is when that emotion is something higher, to something higher. So that might be taking care of your children, or a loved one, or a pet, or something that is beyond you, but you're doing it sort of in service and as a dedication, and you're truly thinking about the other person's well-being. So this is another tool to live a meaningful life. It doesn't have to be devotion to God. It can be devotion to something, or nature, or anything, any principle that is higher than us. So we have visualization or manifestation, devotion, whether it's to God, which is great, or even another human being, or some other creature, or any other worthwhile endeavor. This is another way to have some purpose in your life, is to have a vision board. I learned about this from Steve Harvey. I love to plan. My family knows that I know where I want to go to vacation 5 years from now, and I drive them crazy. But if you don't write it down, it's highly unlikely that you will reach it. And the bigger the goal, the more audacious the goal, the better. Because we shouldn't sell ourselves short. We don't know what we're capable of. And I learned this from some of my mentors. When they tell me their dreams and what they try to do or what they want to do, I'm amazed. I would think, wow, how could you even think that you could do that? And then that in turn empowers me to think, I don't need to shortchange myself. And it can be anything. It can be monetary. It can be what kind of a person you want to be, what kind of sort of satisfaction you want to have. It could be, a job. It could be some educational thing. It could be a physical, fitness goal. But the bigger, the better. And Steve Harvey talks about how he can't tell us what his vision board looks like, because he says we'll fall over because it's so audacious. But he keeps it in front of him. It's on his phone. It's on his computer. It's on everything that he sees. In fact, he has some goals hemmed into his pants and shirt, like certain ratings that he wants to get. So people who are successful, we'll call it, successful in terms of finances, but even people who are good with their emotions and who have peace, they're probably actively doing it, and they've set a goal for themselves to say, this is the kind of person that I want to be. And they write it down, or they mentally visualize it. But I would encourage you to use one of these tools as a way. I try to do all of them, but I really like vision boards. I write down all sorts of goals, whether it's personal, financial, academic, whatever it may be, travel, those kinds of things. This slide on the right here talks about this concept of right to left thinking. So in business, it's kind of like visualization, but if you say, where are we trying to get, and what would that look like? My business school professor used to say coaching was like, if you say 5 years hence, what would that look like? And what were the steps that we would have taken to get there? That's right to left thinking. So if you say, when I get where I'm going, it's going to look like this, then, if you sort of retrace your steps, then you would say, well, I would have needed to do these things to get to that point. So these are all different ways of having some meaning or purpose, and not just sort of going through the motions, or letting the people just kind of getting tossed in this world, so to speak. So these are all Western kind of views on the thing. So then, like I said, I started to hear about the Ishavasya Upanishad, and it kind of tied a couple things together. So you have to bear with me, but I will go through some of these verses, the mantra. This is the first mantra, and it goes, Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitaha ma griddaha kasya sviddanam. So the meaning here is, in Sanskrit, they're saying, the entire universe is pervaded by God. Enjoy whatever is given by him, but develop an inner renunciation and do not seek wealth from any other source or be greedy. So here we are talking about changing the focus from the world, the material things around us, which are the effect of the cause, which is God, and focusing on the God within these things. Like we said, this is all a Maya, this is all a stage. We're just playing certain roles, but none of this is real. What's real is God. So sort of zooming out and seeing that the thing that's in front of us is not that physical thing, but it's really just a manifestation of God. So here we're, this verse is asking and saying that we're seeking jnanam or spiritual wisdom. And there's a lifestyle choice. Most of us have chosen the grahastha role. We're not sannyasins, most of us. But the idea is to change from perceiving this world as this material world to seeing it as an expression of God. And that the world is just different forms and names of God himself. So the second mantra goes, Kurvanne veha karmani jijivise chatam samaha evam tvainanyate tosti nakarma lipyate nare. Here, this verse says, make everyday action. So all the things that we do into a karma yoga. So being mindful and looking at all the things that we're doing as a privilege, as an opportunity, and not to be bound by it. So if we can learn to love what we have to do, I think there's an expression saying, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life or something like that. So that's the whole concept, is the responsibilities that we have, the things that we have to do. They're really privileges, that there are people depending on us, whether it's for me, my patients, my children, my family, that somebody's depending on me, and that I'm able to do some small thing for them, and not to think of it as a burden, and to look at it as a privilege and a responsibility. So that's kind of this concept of developing inner renunciation. The sixth mantra goes, Yastu sarvani bhutani atmaneva anupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. So here, it's a little more subtle, but the meaning here is that he who sees all beings in himself, like in God, and God in all beings has no hatred. So there's an example here of Krishna's mother, Yashoda, seeing divinity in Krishna himself. So here, in the next slide, I'll talk about the different stage of Atma. But here, we're basically seeing that God is there in the world. However, when Yashoda opens Krishna's mouth, her understanding is that the whole world is actually in God himself. So it's a subtle sort of turn and seeing that everything that we think is real is actually just a manifestation of God. So there are these, there are stages of spiritual wisdom, or atmajnana. The initial is before there's any learning. We think that there's nothing beyond the mind and the body, that what we see physically, this is what it is, and when we're gone, we're gone. We are the body, the whole body-mind complex. The next level is when we think that there's Atma in everybody, that there is a spirit in everyone. And this is that concept of Krishna being the content, but really the world is a container. But then when we see that everybody is in the spirit, that's where it's subtle, but that Krishna is now the container and the world is the content. So what we're trying to get to is that concept of not having likes and dislikes, and seeing the other person as ourselves and as a manifestation of God, and not getting frustrated when we disagree with them, maybe thinking about why they are the way they are, what their background is, finding the common ground instead of holding resentment, those kinds of things. So the Isha Upanishad has 18 verses. It's one of the shorter ones. The Charama Pratana, which is the final prayer, is verses 15 through 18. And it is felt to be one of the 3 prayers that we should say at our deathbed. So I read this interesting challenge that if we can make it a daily prayer at sunset, that we essentially try to close the day and we are not afraid of death. And the first verse, 15, which I'll chant on the next slide, can also be done when you wake up. It's also done during Surya Namaskar yoga. So the concept here is that if you can wake up thankful every morning and be ready to die at the end of the day and say, I did the best I could, thank you for giving me this day, that by the time your death does come, it's not as scary. Or as we'll see, there's a verse in the Gita that says that if you think of God as the last thought before you die, then you will go to God. So again, it just kind of puts each day into perspective and makes us be a little bit more thankful and active and not just passively get through the day. So these verses are, verse 15, Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukam tattvam pushanna pavranu satya dharmaya drishtaye. So here they're saying, it's about the Lord's Son, that the golden lid hides the face of the truth. Please remove it, nourisher of the world, so that I can see thee, I who am devoted to the truth. So when we sort of get down a little bit deeper, basically it's asking for the sun to remove some of the brilliance so that we can see the face of the sun god. And the idea here is that we're so distracted with all of the shiny things around us that we can't focus on our spiritual path or the spiritual truth. So an example here, and this is a little bit of a loose interpretation because Sita is, of course, a form of God herself, but an example of this is when Sita Devi is with Lord Rama, even though she's next to God and an incarnation of Vishnu, she's attracted by the golden deer. So similarly, we're distracted by all the things around us and we don't make time for our spiritual practice. Verse 16, Pushanne karse yama surya prajapatya vyuha rashmin samuha tejo yatte rupam kalyanatamam tatte pashyami yosav aso purusho sohasmi. This is, O nourisher, the lonely one, the son of Prajapati, take thy rays away so that I can see, which is your radiance, the person that is you, that I am. So here we're saying again, Lord Surya Bhagavan, gather your rays so I can see your auspicious face. The one who I'm looking for all my life is none other than me. So here we are invoking the Lord in ourself. Verse 17, Vayuranilam amritam atedam basmantam shariram om krato smara kritam smara krato smara kritam smara. So here, this is a prayer to Lord Agni. And here we're saying, I'm about to merge into the immortal prana. The body will be reduced to ashes. And when this happens, remember the good things that I have done today. So like that book, may my breath become air. May this body be reduced to ashes. And while that's happening, I'm going to remember all the good things that I did today. And so basically, forgive me for my mistakes and reflecting on the good things that we did for the day. The last verse is Agne Naya Supataraye Asman Vishwani Deva Vayunani Vidvan Yuyodyasma Juhurana Meno Bhuyishtam Te Nama Uktim Videma. So here we're saying, oh Lord Agni, lead me by the good path that I can enjoy the wealth. You know all the good things I've done. Destroy the sin in me, and I will salute you over and over again. So basically saying, show me the righteous path. You're all-knowing. Take all obstacles away that I've created from my bad deeds. And at this point, when someone is deathly ill, they can't even pray. All they have is potentially their voice or their mental prayer. And so we're saying we'll do that over and over every night if we're given another chance. So this is that Gita verse, chapter 8, verse 6. Yam yam va pismaran bhavam Tyajatyante kalevaram tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tadbhava bhavitaha. So this one says, again, whatever one remembers upon giving up the body at the time of death, O son of Kunti, one attains that state, being always absorbed in such contemplation. So again here, the last thing that we think about when we die, if we can think about God, then that's where we will go. Now, ironically enough, all of these prayers are just a preparation, and one who attains spiritual wisdom doesn't need to do these things because they're not afraid of death. It is only for the rest of us to give some structure, some guidance to kind of keep things in perspective so that we don't take each day for granted. So those are the slides and topics that I wanted to discuss. Today's Ugadi, and I wanted to thank you all for letting me speak today. And as a reminder for the Telugu folks and other people celebrating our New Year and Ugadi, the Ugadi Pachadi is a combination of not just sweet things, but bitter, sour, hot, because that's what life is. It's a combination of things, and we have to remember that it's not always going to be pleasant. So I would like to ask my daughters, I'm going to ask, I'm going to stop sharing. Right. I'm going to ask my daughters, Shreya and Savya Jatla, to sing the Shiva Panchakshara Stotram, and then I'm going to ask Jyoti to sing the Hanuman Chalisa and the Mangala Shloka, and we will have some time to discuss. I'm gonna let them slide in.
Nagendraharaya Trilochanaya Basmangaragaya Maheshwaraya Nityaya Shuddhaya Digambaraya Tasmai Nakaraya Namah Shivaya 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 Mandakini Salila Chandana Chachitaya Nandishvara Pramatanata Mahesharaya Mandara Pushpa Bahu Pushpa Supojitaya Tasmai Makaraya Namah Shivaya 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 Shivaya Gauri Vadanabja Vrinda Suryaya Dakshadvaranashakaya Srinilakantaya Vrishadvajaya Tasmai Shikaraya Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya, Namah Shivaya. Vasishta Kumbho Bhava Gautamarya Munindra Deva Chita Shekaraya Chandraka Vaishvanarayochanaya Tasmai Vakaraya Namah Shivaya, 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 Namah Shivaya. Yajñasvarupaya Jatadaraya Pinakahastaya Sanatanaya Divyaya Devaya Digambaraya Tasmai Akaraya Namah Shivaya, 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 Namah Shivaya.
जय हनुमान ज्ञान गुण सागर जय कपीसतिहु लोक उजागर रामदूत तुलित बलधामा अंजनी पुत्र पवन सुत नामा महावीर विक्रम बजरंगी कुमति निवार सुमति के संगी कंचन वरन विराज सुबेसा कानन कुंडल कुंचित केसा हाथ वज्र और ध्वजा विराजे कांधे मूंज जनेऊ साजे शंकर सुवन केसरी नंदन तेज प्रताप महाजगवंदन विद्यावान गुणी अति चातुर राम काज करिबे को आतुर प्रभु चरित्र सुनिबे को रसिया राम लखन सीता मन बसिया सूक्ष्म रूप धरि सियहि दिखावा विकट रूप धरि लंक जरावा भीम रूप धरि असुर संहारे रामचंद्र के काज समारे लाय संजीवन लखन जियाये श्री रघुवीर हरषि उर लाये रघुपति कीन्ही बहुत बढ़ाई तुम मम प्रिय भरतहि सम भाई सहस बदन तुम रोजस गावे हस कहि श्रीपति कंठ लगावे सनकादिक ब्रह्मादि मुनीसा नारद सारद सहित अहिसा यम कुबेर दिगपाल जहाते कवि कोविद कहि सखे कहाते तुम उपकार सुग्रीवहि कीन्हा राम मिलाये राजपद दीन्हा तुमरो मंत्र विभीषण माना लंकेश्वर भय सब जग जाना, युग सहस्र योजन पर भानु, लील्योताहि मधुर फल जानु, प्रभु मुद्रिका मेलि मुख माहि, जलधि लांघि गए अचरज नाही, दुर्गम काज जगत के जेते, सुगम अनुग्रह तुमरे तेते, राम दुआरे तुम रखवारे, होत न आज्ञा बिन पैसारे, सब सुख लहे तुम्हारी सरना, तुम रक्षक काहू को डरना, आपन तेज सम्हारो आपे, तीनों लोक हाँकते कापे, भूत पिशाच निकट नहीं आवे, महावीर जब नाम सुनावे, नासै रोग हरे सब पीरा, जपत निरंतर हनुमत बीरा, संकट से हनुमान छुड़ावे, मन क्रम भजन ध्यान जो लावे, सब पर राम तपस्वी राजा, तिनके काज सकल तुम साजा, और मनोरथ जो कोई लावे, सोई अमित जीवन फल पावे, चारों युग परताप तुम्हारा, है प्रसिद्ध जगत उजियारा, साधु संत के तुम रखवारे, असुर निकंदन राम दुलारे, अष्ट सिद्धि नव निधि के दाता, असबर दीन जानकी माता, राम रसायन तुमरे पासा, सदा रहो रघुपति के दासा, तुमरे भजन राम को भावे, जन्म जन्म के दुख बिसरावे, अंत काल रघुवर पुर जाई, जहाँ जन्मि हरि भक्त कहाई, और देवता चित्त न धरई, हनुमत से सर्व सुख करई, संकट कटे मिटे सब पीरा, जो सुमिरै हनुमत बलबीरा, जय 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 हनुमान गोसाई, कृपा करहु गुरुदेव की नाई, जो सत बार पाठ कर कोई, छूटहि बंधि महासुख होई, जो यह पढ़े हनुमान चालीसा, होय सिद्धि साखी गौरीसा, तुलसीदास सदा हरि चेरा, कीजय नाथ हृदय महडेरा, पवन तनया संकट हरन, मंगल मूर्ति रूप, राम लखन सीता सहित, हृदय बसहु सुरभूप, वीर हनुमाना अति बलवाना, राम नाम रसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, वीर हनुमाना अति बलवाना, राम नाम रसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की, राम लक्ष्मण जानकी जय बोलो हनुमान की, वीर हनुमाना अति बलवाना, राम नाम रसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम, रघुपति राघव राजा राम पतित पावन सीताराम, वीर हनुमाना अति बलवाना, राम नाम रसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, हो प्रभु मन बसिया रे, ओम असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मा अमृतंगमय, ओम शांति शांति शांतिः, लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु, लोका समस्ता सुखिनो भवन्तु, loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om. Thank you.
Thank you, Amma Jyoti. Murali, that was a wonderful session. And Shreya and Savya stole the show, though. But I think it's time for comments, questions. Raju, Dr. Raju?
Yeah, Dr. Biram. Murali, that was such a wonderful session. As Dr. Biram said, it was just so enriched by your lovely daughters, beautiful singing. I'm sure that's coming from their mother. But please encourage them to continue learn singing. It looks like they're learning classical music. So please tell them that those 5 beautiful verses are the Panchakshari, Na, Ma, Si, Vaya. So each verse starts with that letter, Na, Nagendra Haraya, Ma, Mandakini, then Si, Sivaya, Va, Vasistha, and Ya, Yajna. So it is a very powerful mantra. So may that protect them and all of us and all your family. So that Panchakshari is Namah Shivaya from Rudram Namakam Chamakam, so auspicious to chant around this time, Sandhya Samayam, and the Pradosha Kala, on Somavasara, and on Ugadi day. You know, Ugadi actually is a Sankramana, so between today and tomorrow, some people are celebrating tomorrow. So very, very auspiciously thought over and sung. That is one, and that is exactly in the center of Yajna, that Yajurveda. So this mantra is the center of all our Vedic mantras. Namah Shivaya. Thank you. Then I don't know whether you can share your first slide, but I just wanted, being in neonatal perinatal medicine, I could not resist commenting on that slide. Asti Jayate Vardhate.
Sure, yes.
I know the 6 stages of life beautifully described in our scriptures. Some people change the order a little bit, and I think I take that, being in neonatal perinatal medicine, Asti, life in the womb, and then Jayate, born, and then if you go a little bit more philosophical into philosophical discussion, then Asti is that life was there even before coming to the womb. So, but again, as I said, some put the order that way. So Asti Jayate Vardhate Viparinamate Apakshayate Nashyate. So wonderful. Then you chose a very, very profound Upanishad. And Dr. Biram, can I take just a couple more minutes? Because
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So Vinoba Bhave says, Murali, Ishavasya Upanishad is the succinct abstract of Bhagavad Gita. Or in other words, Bhagavad Gita is a commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad. Thank you for introducing this to everyone. And then the second point is the very word Ishavasyam. The first word is one of the great Mahavakyas, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. So all this is Brahma or Isha. Then it also tells us about another Mahavakya, that Aham Brahmasmi, in the form of Asau Purusho Soham Asmi. And then you quoted a great verse from Gita, Antakale Chamameva, or whatever we think of while leaving this world, that's what we become. And to become that Mahatma Gandhi, says that to say that you have to think of it every day, every time. And in the 8th chapter, in the same chapter, Krishna says, Tasmat Sarveshu Kaleshu Mam Anusmara Yudhyacha. So remembering me, you live the life and fight the circumstances. Thank you. Thank you so much for this profound, wonderful Upanishad and explanation with beautiful your interpretation and contemporary application and interpretation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Raju. Thank you, Jyoti, for singing as well. And thank you, Dr. Biram, for your thoughts.
We still have time. Any additional comments?
Hi, guys. Murli, thank you so much for talking. And it was really a great subject. I found my coaching brain also highly engaged in a lot of this. A lot of what I share with clients is it's interesting to see the spiritual roots of what I share in more scientific terms. So anyway, that was, I really enjoyed that. And of course, your daughter's performance was just beautiful. Dr. Raju, I thought your comment about life in the womb was before birth it sat better with me personally. I agree. I think that as the experience of growing a human, for lack of better terms, I feel like each child had their own personality even before they came out. And so I would definitely agree that that part of life starts, even before birth. But everyone, thank you so much for your time here and for allowing my comments, and I'm finished speaking.
Thank you, Simanji.
Murali, what prompted you to focus on that specific Upanishad and that topic?
So like I said, Shubha, one of our pediatricians down in Lakeway, introduced me to Param Vedanta, and they went through the Gita first, and then they went through, then they started going through the Upanishads. And I don't know, the smaller ones just sort of resonate with me more. It's just my novice level of understanding. But I really, I think the concept of death, I think if you can not be afraid of it, if you can go to bed every night, thinking that I did the best I could, and if you always have that on your mind, maybe just, being a little bit more active and mindful about how your day is going, and just being thankful. I think that just resonated with me. But they had been going through, I think they went through like 10 Upanishads, and they only pick a few verses, and it just resonated with me a little bit more. And like I said, we talked about living a life of purpose with our students, and I was listening to this around that time, and I thought it somehow connected. But I think, a lot of times it's so easy to become a victim of circumstance and feel like things are stacked against you. But we're just so fortunate to have, a life as a human being. And I think there's a lot of responsibility and privilege that we have, that if we just take a moment to reflect, we can see that we have really a lot of good things going on in our life. So it just kind of somehow resonated with me, but I wasn't necessarily looking for this Upanishad. Actually, I was very intimidated about even starting to listen about the Upanishads. I don't know what I would like us to learn more about them or incorporate them, going forward if we can, because they really are sort of our scriptural, there are Vedic texts of, where our spirituality and our religion comes from. So I just didn't know much about them.
Yeah, I saw two strong messages in your talk. One is certainly not be afraid of death and be prepared for death. But at the same time, when you're here, just don't kill your time. Be purposeful and and be ambitious, be motivated. So I think that is very well done. Two very important messages. Any other comments, Dr. Dan Reddy?
Murali, I really enjoyed your talk, and as everybody said, your daughters are, much more fantastic. I really love their voice.
Thank you.
You contrasted the first few slides about Western thinking, and in this country and the Western parts of the world, we see a lot of courses, self-help, Dale Carnegie course, that course, this course, set goals, set timeline, get there. It's all outwardly, it's marked contrast to the Eastern thinking where everything is inwardly. Maybe that's the reason we are really ancient Sanatana Dharma, and it survived onslaught after onslaught, in that part of the world. I think the concept that you see in everybody the same Atman. In other words, in all these various forms that we see outside world is really the same Atman that it's you are. So once you realize that all these various manifestations are you alone, it's hard to get mad at yourself or not love yourself. Because, one thing everybody, is certain is you love yourself more than, anything else in the world. So if you can see everybody else's manifestation of you alone, then world is at a much more peaceful place than we will be. And it's all God's manifestation. Ishavashopanishad did bring that concept clearly. And I think there is so much you said that needs to be reflected on. Thank you.
Dr. Raju, you're going to say something? Sorry.
No, for the same reasons you all three have mentioned, this Upanishad, actually it is the first, whenever we talk about Upanishads, we start with Ishavasya of 108 Upanishads. Out of that, 11 were chosen, and Shankaracharya wrote commentary on 10 of them. And the very first one is Ishavasya. Like Murali has said, it is so compact, and the number of verses, each one, Swami Chinmayananda used to say, you cannot take a word out of it, and you cannot put an extra word in it to make it complete. For the same reasons, as you said, it is about the life. It's living in the world and leaving the world. That's what Swami Chinmayananda used to say. So it talks about both living in the world and leaving the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Shubha with her hand up. I don't know.
Yeah, somebody else was going to say something.
Shubha, please go ahead.
Any other comments, questions?
There are quite a few comments people have put in.
Yeah. A lot of them are basically talking about how good the session was, and session as a whole, and a lot of praise for Shreya and Savya in comments. Dr. Raju, what do we have for rest of the week?
Rest of the week, tomorrow we are celebrating Ugadi in Temple, Texas. So the Mandir will be celebrating. That's why we have to cancel the session. That's what Dr. Nair has said. And Wednesday, Girija Garu is going to speak on a challenging subject, bringing the similarities and the theoretical and practical application of all the philosophy through Gita and Bhagavatam. And Thursday, we have Ashwath Karu to talk about the aspects of Vedanga. And then Friday, instead of Sriram Sarvottam, Shamalaji is going to speak on the Sukra, because it is so apt to speak on Sukra, on Sukravasara. So she will be speaking on Navagraha Kirtana's Sukra on Friday.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Raju. Thank you, Murali. Thank you, Shreya. Thank you, Savya. Thank you, Jyoti. Wonderful session, and happy Ugadi. And we all see you back here on Wednesday, same time, same place. Shubharatri.
Bharatri.
Thank you.
Shubharatri.
Thank you, Murali. Subharatri.